You're listening to episode 33 of season 4 of the Fat Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Asha Lamy, and today we're talking about Phoenix's story. I picked the name Phoenix last week. I'm very proud of that. For those of you who have not listened to the last two podcasts, first of all, why not? Well, I mean, are you going in reverse order, or you just didn't fancy the look of them, or you just like to dip in and dip out? Like, why not go back a couple of sessions? Because they're all brilliant. But no, what we've been doing is I have been creating these fictional characters, giving them a name. It's a gender-neutral name and gender-neutral pronouns, so that anyone listening can pretend that they in fact are Phoenix and can put themselves in Phoenix's shoes. It's not based on... None of these fictional characters are based on any one person. It's based on an amalgamation of lots of different people, lots of different experiences. I've created a character because I'm a very creative person, you see. So I've created characters in my mind. But we're going to pretend they're very real. And when I tell a story, you're going to think they're very real. And you might be thinking, is Asha talking about me? No, I'm not. I promise I haven't read your diary. I'm just talking about a fictional character. And, you know, you might recognise yourself in that fictional character. Don't be surprised if that's the case. Because, you know, everyone always thinks they're alone. I think I did a post about this once. I mean, it was a story. Everyone thinks they're alone. Everyone thinks it's happening to me, but it's not happening to someone else. Not in an arrogant way, not like in a narcissistic way, but in a sort of like, you know, they just can't believe that this could be happening to other people. But more often than not, it is happening to other people, folks. Very much so. So you are not the only one. So if you recognise yourself in this, then, you know, any similarities to characters, living or dead, is purely unintentional. That's just accident. Coincidence. So Phoenix. Phoenix came to see me with a sudden deterioration in their general health. It was very vague. They just suddenly became quite unwell. Minding their own business. 6 months ago. Everything's fine. Everything's completely normal. They're just living their best life, and then all of a sudden, bang, something changes. And it's not like they collapse and end up in hospital. I'm just saying, like, within a couple of weeks, like, they feel like a completely different person. They're exhausted, and they're aching everywhere. Pain, fatigue, and, like, you know, literally not even able to get up and go to the bathroom without feeling tired and a bit short of breath. Crazy stuff. Just something has clearly gone wrong. And quite possibly it started with a viral infection. Possibly it was COVID. It was at the time when, you know, there was a kind of a surge in COVID cases, but they didn't test, or let's just say they tested negative. And just a side point here, I don't know if you know this, but the COVID test that you buy for home, I think then the false negative test rate is something like, is in its 90% plus for most of these tests. The false negative rate for the first or second days. So day 1 or day 2, if you test, there's a 90% chance a negative test is incorrect. That's not helpful. And it would be, and actually I think that's very harmful. In fact, false negatives are always harmful, because when someone gets a false negative from a test, they assume that everything is okay, and it's not. False positive is not as pleasant, but it's less dangerous, because if you get a positive and it turns out it was wrong, oh, well, okay, so you had to do an extra test, or you ended up, you know, whatever, but you stayed at home for a few days. Look, it's not the end of the world. But if you get a false negative test and you're like, oh, it's not COVID, but it is, that's way worse. Okay. So the false negative rate for, I believe, I've read this more than once, for the home tests, I think it differs from test to test. And these are the home ones, not the ones in hospital, is really, really high. And I believe, I don't want to be quoted as fact here, but I believe it's up to 90% for the first day. Much, much less likely to be false negative on the 3rd and 4th and 5th subsequent days. But of course, you're most infectious at the beginning, so it's not very helpful. So yeah, I just had to digress for a moment there. But anyway, it could have been COVID. It was a false negative test right at the beginning, but we don't know for sure. But other than that, they you know, they were a bit unwell. They can remember feeling like maybe they were just a bit run down, but nothing serious. There was no obvious signs even then of anything serious. It was a cold at best, you know, just one of those 48-hour things. So here we are. Phoenix minding their own business, living their best life, and all of a sudden 6 months ago, noticed a real deterioration. unexplainable. Goes to the doctor, understandably. After in the first couple of weeks, just soon after it happens, doctor's like, oh, it's probably infection. Maybe it was COVID. You'll be fine. You'll recover. It takes some time. Take some time to yourself. Here, I'll sign you off for a couple of weeks from work, and that's it. A month later, still not any better. They go back to the doctor. I'm like, okay, it's been a month, and the doctor is still very vague. Yeah, it's been a month now. Like, well, it's been 6 weeks in total, and it's not normal. It's not normal, but it's not normal. It's And then, of course, because when doctors are a bit stumped and they don't know, and they don't think there's anything they need to be doing, but also they don't know how to get you out the door, so they'll sit with you and they'll think, now is the time to do the weight loss lecture, because you are fat. And I don't like that. I don't like that you're fat. I'd really rather you weren't fat. So I'm going to tell you off for being fat. And that's what they do. So instead of saying, look, 6 weeks, I mean, I agree with you, that's weird, but I don't think there's anything that we need to do now. I don't think there's anything that we can do now. Or maybe, I'll do some blood tests. That's another option. I might say, it's been 6 weeks, maybe we'll do some blood tests just to make sure. But even if I decide that actually blood tests aren't warranted in this case, that's my clinical belief, there is absolutely no need to do the weight loss lecture. But it sort of comes out and just they vomit it out every single time because they don't like you being fat. It's at the end of the day, doctors don't like fat patients. And so any excuse for a weight loss lecture, it will get you out the door. And it will feel like they've done something. So they haven't just said, there's nothing I can do, off you go. They have done something. They've told you, well, I know how to fix this. You just need to lose some weight. So they feel good about themselves. They congratulate, pat themselves on the back. Yes, I have done the right thing here by my patient. I have given them sage words of advice. They're going to go off, they're going to lose some weight, they're going to be feeling better, they're going to be looking better, they're going to be healthy, and I, Dr. So-and-so, am the best. But of course, that's not what happens. Phoenix went away like, oh shit, of course, another weight loss lecture. Well, fuck that guy. I'm not going back there. And so proceeds to feel like crap for months. So 6 weeks. For a doctor, 6 weeks is kind of just on the borderline of at what point in time do we start to take this a bit more seriously and do some investigations? Because if it's an acute thing, like a viral illness that's taking you some time to recover from, especially something like COVID, we're like, up to 6 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks. We call it subacute. The term is subacute. Acute is if it's like the last few days, maybe up to 2 weeks. And subacute is, it's longer than a few days, but it's less than 8 weeks, Beyond that, okay, it's chronic now. It's been going on a really long time. But of course, Phoenix said, fuck that doctor. I'm not going back to see that guy. And, because this is just yet another example of why doctors literally don't give a shit and blame everything on your weight. So they don't go back. They don't go back at 8 weeks. Even if the doctor had said, come back to see me in a few weeks' time if it's no better, they're not going back. What, for another fucking weight loss lecture? I don't think so. So poor Phoenix has suffered at home for months, not feeling any better. And then eventually is like, you know what? I better go and see a doctor because this is getting ridiculous. And I can't anymore. And I haven't been able to go back to work. My life is completely different. And they would describe things like, I'm no longer able to go and do the shopping. Walking around the grocery store is enough to keep me so exhausted. I can't do it anymore. I have to do an online shop. This was a very active person before. Of course they were able to do their own shopping. Yeah, they were very active. Loved a good hike and a swim. Well, the swim bit's all right. A hike's not too bad. They weren't like one of those weird people that like CrossFit. No offense if you like CrossFit, but you know what I mean. They were active, but not to the extreme. I really feel like I'm going to get cancelled by CrossFit lovers now. I'm really sorry. I've got nothing against CrossFit. It's great. Keep going. Do you. More power to you. Anyway. Moving on, just sweep that under the rug. They went to see their doctor eventually because they weren't managing to do their groceries anymore. They couldn't go back to work. They couldn't go swimming. They couldn't go outdoors. It was just terrible. It was just something had obviously happened. Something significant had happened to poor Phoenix, and they didn't understand what was happening. So went to see a doctor again. We'll pretend it's the same guy. Highly suspicious, ready for a fight because this guy's just going to tell me to lose weight again. But actually the doctor was like, well, we probably ought to do some blood tests at this stage. So he did some blood tests. Blood tests were normal. And then said, well, all your blood tests are normal, so there's not anything to worry about. And Felix said, okay, but yeah, but what's causing this? Maybe it's possibly chronic fatigue, or it's long COVID, or it's something like that. And were very dismissive, because they made it very clear that even if it is those things, there's nothing we're going to do about it. And to be quite honest, I'm not convinced those things are real things. There was a real sense Phoenix got that they were being labelled a hypochondriac. Lazy, unfit, greedy, fat hypochondriac. That's what they were being labelled as. That's how their doctor made them feel. Even if he didn't have the courage to come out and say it, he made it very clear that's how he felt. And no offer to do anything further, right? No, like, we'll send you to a chronic fatigue, centre or something like that. There was no like, and this is what we'll do next. It was just like, there's nothing wrong with you. Off you go. Blood tests are fine. Off you go. Off you pop. And so this was like this was the Phoenix's third experience of going to the doctor after this problem had happened. First time when it first happened and they were sort of panicked. Okay, it's a viral infection, accepted that. Second time when it had been a few weeks after that, about 6 weeks, and they were like, are you sure there's anything wrong? And that's when they got the weight loss lecture. And then third time had gone, was taken a little bit more seriously, blood tests were all normal, that's it, dismissed. So then they came to see me because I had said, hey, if your doctor's ignoring your symptoms and dismissing things and blaming things on your weight, why not book an appointment with me? So they did. And so I sat down and we talked about what had been going on. And as Phoenix began to share their story, I had a real sense that no one had listened up until this point. And this wasn't the first time a doctor hadn't listened or taken things seriously. I had a real, this was a kind of, it was very clear from the beginning that this person had been failed by their doctors who just simply were not interested in Phoenix as a person, didn't believe them when they said that they were active. So like when they were saying, actually, my activity levels have gone down, it was just like, whatever you say, mate, look at the state of you. Of course you don't hike and swim. And when your version of a hike is sort of a little walk to the corner shop. So they were never believed. They were not listened to. They were not taken seriously. And this was the story of their lives. And when we went back, we realised that this had been the case for a really long time, and that doctors had been doing this over and over again. And it was just really sad, really, because it doesn't take much to believe your patient. It's so easy to just say, yeah, I believe you. The first thing I said was, like, you don't have to convince me that that's how many miles you used to be able to walk. If you say, I used to do a 10-mile hike, I'll be like, all right, weirdo. But in my head, I'll be thinking that. But I believe you. I believe you. Of course I believe. Why would you lie about that? If you tell me that, you've always been this weight, but nothing's changed, and yet all of a sudden your symptoms have come on, why is it your weight? How are we suddenly blaming it on your weight? You don't have to convince me that that's a bullshit excuse. I know it's bullshit. It's fine. I believe you. And so I noticed, even in the first session, that Phoenix was beginning to calm down and was beginning to be like, all right, okay, I don't have to prove anything right now. I can just relax. I can ease into it. And slowly the shoulders relaxed, and the posture sort of flopped a bit, and they were able to lean in and trust me a little bit. And it was like they felt a bit more safe and able to explore things. And the first thing I said was, well, something's happened. Of course something's happened. It's clear to me that something's happened. And we can pinpoint exactly when it happened. We know the date it happened. I don't know what it is. And I'm going to be honest with you. We might never know. We might never know. Or it could be a combination of a lot of things. Because there were a lot of things going on in Phoenix's life, as there are in many people's lives. So there was this possible viral infection, possibly COVID, on a background of working way too hard, because obviously fat body and other marginalised identities as well. And so having to work 20 times as hard to prove themselves in the office, among friends, just walking down the street, just life was hard. And so Phoenix was used to working hard and pushing through and keep going and don't show weakness and don't be lazy and all of this stuff. So there was a background of perhaps working to the point of burnout. There were some mental health issues. Who doesn't have struggles with their mental health at the moment, especially if you're marginalised? I mean, there's a dumpster fire out there. It really is. And so they were sort of talking about, like, you know, Palestine and how that was stressing them out, and you know, money worries, and there was a lot. There was a lot. Because we are, you know, we love to kind of separate the physical body from the rest of us, as if the physical body is failing in some way and it can't possibly be linked to anything else that's going on. And we have to pick. It's one or the other. Doctors make us pick. It's physical and therefore I'm interested, or it's not physical and you can fuck off. But that's not fair. We are not a body, an isolated body. We're a body that is inhabited by a human being with thoughts and feelings, and, you know, a social being who needs interactions, someone who was impacted by previous experiences, including experiences with healthcare professionals. You know, we've got somebody who is, you know, is making money and needs to make money, lives in a community, might not be a nice community. You know, all these things going on. You can't separate them somehow. So one of the things that I needed to do was I needed to get to know Phoenix as a whole person, not just like the symptoms, which are just one part of it. But as I said to you, I think I said it last week now. I can't remember, but I think I said last week, what we talk about right at the beginning is future you. Like the idea of future you is, what do you actually want to get out of these sessions? That's what I'm trying to establish. So what does future you look like? And for Phoenix, future you was simply like, I want to go back to normal. I want to go back to where I was fine 6 months ago, a year ago, whenever it is. I can't remember what I said now. I think it was 6 months. And so I was fine then. I want to go back to then. Like, why, you know, if there's nothing wrong with me, then why can't I go back to then? And there was a lot of blaming themselves. Like, it's my fault because I should just be able to get back into the swing of things. And so, you know, I knew then that what were the expectations? The expectations, it was less about figuring out what was wrong, although sometimes figuring out what is wrong is necessary to improve. But actually, in Phoenix's case, the diagnosis was less important than the outcome. The outcome needs to be, I need to feel more like myself because I don't like these limitations. And part of that, I hate to say, folks, is a little bit of ableism. And when I say a little bit, I mean quite a lot of it. And that is no judgment, Phoenix. That's no judgment because we've all got it. And I see it with every single person that comes to see me with a diagnosis, especially if they get given a chronic diagnosis, especially if that diagnosis is debilitating them in any way. So chronic fatigue is a really classic example. Oftentimes, people with chronic fatigue were doing great. Everything was great. Very capable, very confident, very smart, very, very fun and gregarious and outgoing. Not everybody is like that. But then all of a sudden, maybe let's take chronic fatigue off the table. Let's just say in this case, all of a sudden, snap, something changes. They are no longer able to be the very capable, confident person who can take on all of the roles in the office and still manage to get home on time at the end of the day, who is just so just on it all the time, and everyone admires. That's because when you're fat and you've been bullied and you've experienced rejection, actually you got to prove yourself, and that's what you do. You prove yourself. You prove that you're able to do all of those things, and then all of a sudden when you're not, that's not easy. That's not fun. And then we realise, I'm a lot more ableist than I thought I was because my self-worth and my self-confidence came from my ability to do certain things, perform certain tasks. And now that I am not able to do them anymore, I'm judging myself as less worthy. And if I'm judging myself as less worthy, it means I'm judging other people as less worthy as well. So there you go. Hello, ableism. It's not your fault. Everyone's ableist because, we live in a in a white supremacist, colonialist, patriarchal, end-stage capitalist world. We all grew up in it. We were all told that it's productivity that matters and you are what you do. And so if you're not able to do it for whatever reason, well, you're basically no good to us. You're useless. And society, 100 years ago, we were trying to find ways to literally kill off disabled people. In some cases, 100 years ago, we were euthanizing them in certain parts of the world, Germany, but even kind of like, sterilization programs and stuff, like institutionalizing people, all sorts of things. We did not like a disabled person. I am not an expert in disability rights. I follow disabled people who talk about disability rights and disability justice. It's very important. I'm not here to speak on that, but I do recognise in myself and other people that actually when someone gets diagnosed with an illness, especially if their prognosis suggests that they will not be able to do the things they once were able to do, I spot that ableism straight away. Don't judge it, just spot it. So there was some internalized ableism we needed to work on, and that wasn't fun for either of us, because I feel it too. I get it. I hear you. It's understandable. And also there was a feeling, as it became apparent what it was, there was also the feeling of shame of, I can't believe I feel this way. I can't believe I feel like this. I shouldn't feel like this. Phoenix is a great person. Phoenix is a very caring person. Phoenix cares about disability rights and disability justice. Just didn't realise that might apply to them one day. So we dealt with that. And we also had to actually sort of look at the details and of the medical history and actually figure out what actually could be causing this, because as I said, it might be a combination of lots of things. So what do? First thing, I asked Phoenix to give me a list of absolutely anything they could possibly think of could have caused this. Even if it was I ate a funny strawberry that day, anything you can think of, it's probably relevant. There's nothing you can say that's weird. So we wrote down a big list. And of course, all the things like I said, the working hard at work and being tired and was it COVID, and all these things got put down. And, my mother has lupus. Could it be that? And it's a big, long list. And one of my favourite things about doing this with patients is that usually, I think I've said this before, they'll come up with things I didn't think of. It's very useful because I might have a list of my differential diagnosis, and then I ask them to write a list, and I'm like, I'll just add that to mine, shall I? Yep, I'll put that there as, didn't think about that. So differential diagnosis is very useful to have. And it's nice to be able to look at and say, all right, this is what we're looking at, now what? And so before we get there, I ask, what are your concerns? What are you worried about? Tell me. And list them, just shout them out, whatever comes to mind, doesn't matter. And so again, Phoenix wrote, that I'll never be able to hike again, that I'll never be able to swim again, that this is me for the rest of my life, that no one's ever going to figure out what's wrong with me. I'm worried it's going to get worse. Legitimate things that were very understandable, wrote all the concerns down. That's really helpful because that helps us to narrow down. Again, future you was really helpful. What do you want to look like at the end of these sessions? But also, what are your concerns? Also very helpful. What do we want to sort of focus on, laser in on? And then we'll go to, all right, so what do we think we need to do? Here's our differential list. Let's look at it and let's figure out what we need to do. How do we rule in or rule out? And then we go through the list. And some things we are able to rule out. So Phoenix was able to go back to their doctor and say, all right, you've done these tests, but I want to have lung function tests or whatever it is. I'm grasping at straws now, but, fine. So the doctor did those and they were normal, cross them off. Obviously, the great thing about that is if something is picked up. And sometimes we're like, woohoo, we figured it out, but it's not all of it, because what is often the case, we'll get a blood test and they'll go, oh, your vitamin D is low. Vitamin D is low. And then you'll think, oh, thank God, we know what's wrong. That's great. So you take your vitamin D, you take your tablets, take them all, and then you're like, but I still can't go for my hike. What happened? What happened here? And that's because, great, it was important that we picked that up, but that wasn't the only reason. So we ticked that box, we treated it, and we still haven't got anywhere. So we have to go back to the list and try again. And sometimes we have to accept that we're looking at lots of things. And as I said, sometimes we have to accept that we never, ever find, because there isn't a test. It's not because it's not there. It's because we can't test for it. So we can never prove, we can never say with certainty what caused these symptoms. But actually, remember, Felix was more interested in getting back to things. And what I noticed about Phoenix is the moment they were starting to feel it a little bit better, they were out on their walk, marching. And then they'd come and see me and they'd be like, and I was fine for a few days and then I went for a walk and now I'm exhausted again. And so we worked a little bit more on the ableism and Also on the kind of like, looking back and why do you feel like you can't cut yourself a break? Why do you feel like you're in such a rush to get back to normal? And there were very good reasons. Like, I want to, it will make me happy, it will improve my mental health. All of those things were very, very valid. But what Phoenix had to come to accept is that actually sometimes treating a medical condition, especially a chronic condition, especially an invisible chronic condition, takes time. Sometimes you never get back to where you were. And sometimes you do, but it takes a really long time, like years. And so if you are feeling a little bit better, I'm not saying don't go for a walk. I'm just saying it needs to be a really small walk around the block, and a slow one at that. And so we came up with more of a plan, a much more long-term plan about getting back into, getting closer to their goal, as close to their goals as they can. So rather than like, we're going to be able to do what we were doing before, we talked about like, what might it look like instead? And what I noticed about Phoenix was that, yes, they liked being outdoors. Yes, they did. There's no question about that. Outdoors really, like, some people just love being in the outdoors. Phoenix was one of them. But the kind of being able to do the big hikes and the big swims and stuff, part of it was a sense of it came from a place of insecurity. It came from a place of low self-worth. I need to prove to myself and other people that I can do this. So I think that's why it was such a big struggle. Why all of a sudden they couldn't do it, and that made such an impact. Because then maybe those people were right. Maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I am fat, lazy, and all of those things, you see? So we had to explore a little bit about like what life might look like. That maybe swimming will be possible, but it won't be the big swims, and maybe it won't be the big hikes, but that you could still be outdoors. And maybe if you want to go outdoors, there'll have to be a drive followed by a small walk followed by a drive home. And that didn't sit right with Phoenix for a long time. But as they explored all of these underlying issues and health beliefs, they explored past trauma, past stigma, they explored, family dynamics and social dynamics and stuff like that, and explored, wider concepts of social justice. They began to realise that, okay, like, I might never go back there, but I will be, I will cope. It'll be okay. Everything will be okay. So once again, we didn't end with a happy ending. I don't think any of my fictional characters are going to have happy endings, because I don't do for happy endings here, folks. But there was a transformation, wasn't there? There's a real transformation. Hopefully, as you've listened to Phoenix's story, you notice the transformation. I've run 3 of these. I don't know whether it's time to do something else next week, because, I've just been doing one after the other. I love feedback. So if you're able to feedback to me about whether you like these stories and whether you want me to go on, like, please do. And if you've heard Phoenix's story and gone, do you know what? That's brought this up or brought that up. You can email me, right? contact@fatdoctor.co.uk. You can just email me. Just to say, hey, I really related to that, or it brought up these issues, or what do you think of this? Like, you just get in touch. You can go to my website, fatdoctor.co.uk, and get in touch with me there. You can get in touch by emailing me. Just say hello. If you just want to say hello, feel free. Love it. You can do it on my socials as well. I sort of don't always check my DMs, especially if we haven't DM'd before. So I'll see if you've messaged me before, it'll come up. But if you're in that kind of pile of people that quite often builds up, I am not at a place where I'm able to filter through all the trolls yet, and so I sort of avoid that place. I have to go in there sometimes just so I can answer your messages. But then there's another part of me that's like, I'm not sure that I'm psychologically ready to face a troll today. So I have to ask myself, can I fight a troll today? Am I in a place where I can fight a troll? So DMing me on social media is not as a sort of guaranteed way to get in touch with me, but definitely email me. And hey, I think they do overlap a little bit, but I do share a lot of stuff on my emails as well. Do you subscribe to my mailing list? Because I put stuff on there that I don't put on here. So you need to be subscribed to both, folks. Also, are you subscribed to my podcast? Because I'm going to start asking people to like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. God, I used to hate it when people said that, but now I realise it's quite helpful for me when it comes to algorithms. So could you like and subscribe it, please? So it could do better. And then, I can continue to do it. That would be super helpful. Thanks very much. See you next week. I'm not going to make any promises because I don't know what's going to happen. But maybe there'll be another fictional character. Maybe there'll be something else. Be like a surprise. Take care. Enjoy the week.